Maria's Fanfie confession in Crimson and Astartes, they told me failure was death, but death would have been mercy. I speak now from a place between existence and oblivion, from a body that is no longer mine, from a mind that remembers what it was to be more than this, to be angels of death, to be the Emperor's wrath made flesh, to be as perfect. I was Brother-Sergeant Varek Thane of the Crimson Scythes, 5th Company, 2nd Battle Group. I bore the Emperor's Aquila on my chest and his wrath in my bolter. I had killed for 3 centuries. I had bled on 40 worlds. I had never known fear, until the day I hesitated. Now I am less. They have unmade what they made. They have taken the angel and revealed the worm beneath. I am Servitor Hybrid Unit, designate Theta, 7-7 Varek, bonded to the Fortress Monastery's sub-level manufactorum. My remaining biological components deemed still useful to the chapter that once called me brother. My hands, what remains of them, sort ammunition, count bolter shells, calibrate targeting matrices. The same hands that once held a chainsword now exist only to serve those who still deserve to wield one. But they left me my voice, they left me my memories, perhaps as punishment, perhaps as lesson. So I will speak, I will confess, not for absolution. There is no absolution for what I have done. But so that you who listen, you who still believe in your own perfection, might understand what awaits when that perfection cracks. This is my testimony. This is my requiem. This is what happens when an angel falls. Far guy, I was not always this. Once I was flesh and hope. Once I was a boy. His name, my name, was Thane. Just Thane. No lineage, no legacy. A manufactorum worker's son on a world called Vanheim. A gray planet of gray cities producing gray munitions for a war machine that stretched across the stars. We were born to make bullets. We lived to die unnoticed. We were the Imperium's invisible billions. I was 14 when they came. The Crimson Scythes arrived in the aftermath of an orc invasion. The Greenskins had been repelled, barely, by the Astra Militarum, but not before they had gutted 3 hive cities and slaughtered millions. The Space Marines came not to save us, but to observe, to judge, to select. I remember standing in the selection yard with 2,000 other boys. We were the survivors, those who had not died in the invasion, who had shown some spark of resilience or resourcefulness or simple stubborn refusal to break. We stood in ranks while the chaplain walked among us, his skull-faced helmet turning his eyes, whatever lay behind that death's head visage measuring our souls. He stopped before me. "You," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried, cut through the industrial haze and the crying of mothers and the distant rumble of reconstruction machinery. "Step forward." I did. My legs moved before my mind could question. Obedience was already written into me. The obedience of a child raised in manufactorums, where questioning orders meant death by machinery. "What is your name?" "Thane, my lord." "What do you fear?" I remember the question. I remember the silence that followed as I searched for an answer. I had seen orcs gut my neighbors. I had watched my father die in the invasion, crushed beneath falling block masonry. I had starved for 6 days in the rubble, eating rats and drinking contaminated water. What did I fear? Nothing, my lord, I said, a lie. But the right lie. The chaplain leaned close. I could smell oil and incense and something else, something that might have been age, though I would learn that space marines did not age as mortals did. "You lie," he said, "but you lie with conviction. That is acceptable. Fear is the mind killer, but the absence of fear is the fool's death. The Emperor's Astartes no fear. We simply refuse to let it master us." He straightened. "You are chosen. Thank the Emperor for this honor. Thank him that you will die in his service rather than in obscurity." I did not understand. Not then. I thanked him anyway. They took 50 of us from Vanheim. 50 boys, aged 12 to 16, each one marked by the chaplain's judgment as potentially worthy. We were loaded into a transport and taken to the Scythe of Retribution, the chapter's battle barge, where we would begin our transformation. 32 died in the first year. They do not speak of this in the propaganda. They tell you of glory, of transhuman might, of becoming the Emperor's chosen. They do not tell you of the screaming. They do not tell you of boys whose bodies reject the gene, seed, whose organs liquefy from the inside, who die thrashing in surgical cradles, while apothecaries watch impassively and record their failures for future optimization. The transformation is as agony, not the clean pain of battle, not the sharp, purposeful pain of injury. This was deeper. This was the pain of your body being rewritten at a cellular level, of foreign organs being grafted into spaces that were never meant to hold them, of bones being shattered and rebuilt, of muscles being flensed and regrown, of your very genetic code being overwritten by something ancient and barely understood. They began with the secondary heart. They cracked open my chest. I was awake. They wanted us awake, wanted us to feel it, to prove our worthiness through endurance, and inserted the bio-engineered organ next to my original heart. I felt it begin to beat. Two rhythms, struggling to synchronize, my body rejecting and accepting simultaneously. I did not scream. I bit through my tongue instead. The apothecaries found this acceptable. The osmodula followed. My bones began to grow, to thicken, to become something beyond human durability. The pain was constant, a deep grinding ache that pervaded every moment. I grew 12 centimeters in 3 months. My skull expanded to accommodate my enhanced brain. My ribs fused and thickened until they could turn aside knife blades. I became heavier, denser, my footsteps now leaving impressions in the steel decking. Then the biscopia. My muscles tore themselves apart and rebuilt, fiber by fiber, becoming something that could crush stone with bare hands. I watched my arms swell, watched veins like cables emerge beneath my skin, watched myself become something that was no longer the boy from Vanheim, the hemastamen, the Laramen's organ, the catalepsine node, the preomnar, the omophagia, the multi-lung, the oculobe, the Lehman's ear, the Sussen membrane, the melanochrome, the olytic kidney, the neuroglottis, the mucranoid, the Becher's gland, the progenoid glands. 19 organs. 19 gifts from the Emperor through Robot Guilliman's genetic legacy. For the Crimson Scythes were of Ultramarines' stock, proud descendants of the 13th Legion. 19 pieces of foreign biology inserted into a human frame, remaking it into something more. By the time the implantation was complete, I was no longer human. I stood 2 meters tall. I could see in darkness, breathe toxic atmospheres, eat rocks if necessary, and extract nutrients, go without sleep for weeks, spit acid, survive in vacuum for limited periods, and heal from wounds that would kill normal men in hours. I was 17 years old. I had the strength of 10 men and the combat training of a veteran soldier. I could field strip a bolter in 14 seconds. I could recite the Codex Astartes from memory. I could kill in 100 different ways. I was proud. They do not make you a space marine and send you to war. Not immediately. Not until you have proven yourself worthy not just of the gene seed, but of the Desh chapter. We spent 5 years in the Scout Company, the 10th Company, where neophytes learned the reality of war before being granted the sacred armor. I was good, better than good. I excelled at marksmanship, at infiltration, at the silent kill. My first combat drop was on a world called Tertium Majoris, where we hunted heretics through underhive complexes. I remember the first man I killed. Not the first I killed in training, but the first real kill. An enemy who fought back, who wanted to live, whose death mattered. He was a cultist, his body covered in debased symbols, his mind twisted by whispers from the warp. He saw me in the darkness. My oculobe allowed me to see him perfectly, but he could only perceive my silhouette, and he raised a stubber pistol with shaking hands. Ave Imperator, he whispered. A prayer or a curse? I never knew which. I shot him through the throat. The bolt round entered beneath his chin and exited through the top of his skull, taking most of his cranium with it. His body collapsed instantly, nervous system severed, death instantaneous. I felt nothing. The instructors had trained us well. Emotion was weakness. Hesitation was death. The enemy deserved no mercy. For mercy to the guilty was cruelty to the innocent. I was a good soldier. I followed orders. I killed efficiently. After 3 years in the 10th Company, I was selected for elevation to the battle companies. They ceremonialized my transition. I knelt in the chapter's reclusium while the chaplain anointed my forehead with oils and marked me with the chapter's symbols. "You are no longer Neophyte Thane," he intoned. "You are Brother Thane of the 5th Company, inheritor of the Emperor's will, bearer of his wrath, defender of humanity. You will know no fear, you will know no doubt. You will serve until death, and in death service does not end." "I so swear," I said. The words came easily. I believed them absolutely. They gave me my power armor, Mark Viside plate, painted in the Crimson Scythes colors. Deep red with black trim, a silver scythe emblazoned across the chest. The armor weighed several 100 kilograms, but when interfaced with my black carapace, it moved like a second skin. I was stronger in it, faster, nearly invincible. They gave me a bolter, a holy weapon, mass reactive ammunition that could kill any foe. Each shell was blessed by the chaplain, sanctified with oils and prayers, carrying the Emperor's judgment to the unworthy. They gave me purpose. I was 22 years old. I was an Adeptus Astartes, an angel of death, a space marine of the Crimson Scythes. I would serve for centuries. I would kill thousands. I would never know defeat. I believed that. Emperor, forgive me. I believed that with every fiber of my transhuman being. Tuafar, Partida Bhavani Uar, 314 years. That is how long I served before my fall. 3 centuries of war across the Imperium's endless battlefields. 47 campaigns, 119 major engagements, thousands of minor actions. I fought orcs on Golem IV. I purged heretics on Sanctus Dominatus. I held the line against tyrannid swarms on Krivos. I boarded space hulks and cleared them meter by blood-soaked meter. I dropped from orbit onto demon-infested worlds and fought my way through literal hell. I was good at war. It was what I had been made for. Every augmentation, every organ, every hour of training, all of it served this single purpose. I was a weapon, and weapons do not question. They simply kill. I rose through the ranks. Brother, senior brother, Brother-Sergeant, commanding a 10-man tactical squad. We were Squad Thane, 1st Tactical Squad, 5th Company. My brothers were Brother Kilos, my 2nd, level-headed and precise, the squad's anchor. Brother Doran, heavy weapons specialist who could strip and rebuild a lascannon blindfolded. Brother Vren, close assault specialist, more comfortable with blade than bolter. Brother Malchos, the youngest, barely 50 years of service, still eager, still believing the propaganda absolutely. Brother Juth, taciturn and scarred, who had survived 3 centuries and spoke only when necessary. Brother Havrim, the squad's tech specialist, who communed with machine spirits like they were old friends. Brother Kine, marksman, who could put a bolt round through a target's eye at 800 meters. Brother Olith, who laughed, actually laughed, during combat, who found joy in the perfection of war. Brother Corvin, quiet and contemplative, who read philosophy when not fighting, seeking meaning beyond the trigger. And me, their sergeant, their leader, responsible for their lives, their deaths, their souls. I kept a journal. This was not forbidden. Many space marines kept records, tactical observations, lessons learned. But mine was different. I wrote not just of tactics and kill counts, but of thoughts, observations, questions that I never spoke aloud. An entry from my 108th year of service Siwars. Today we purged a shrine world that had fallen to chaos corruption. The entire population, 40 million souls, had been compromised beyond redemption. The order was exterminatus, but before the cyclonic torpedoes fell, we were deployed to secure a sacred relic from the planetary cathedral. We fought through streets filled with the transformed. They had been human once. You could still see it. The shape of families huddled together, of children clutching corrupted parents, of lovers who had mutated in each other's arms. The warp had remade them, but not completely. Enough remained that they still seemed human. Brother Malchos asked why we didn't simply evacuate them, attempt rehabilitation. Purification. F. Captain Andros heard him. Struck him across the face hard enough to crack ceramite. There is no redemption for the tainted, the captain said. The fallen are already dead. We simply make it official. F. Maltos did not question again. Neither did I. But the question remained unspoken: if they are already dead, why did they scream like the living when we burned them? I wrote that entry in private in my cell aboard the Scythe of Retribution, by the light of a single candle. I never showed it to anyone. I knew it revealed weakness, not in action, but in thought. Doubt was the first step to corruption. Question authority, and you question the Emperor. Question the Emperor, and you opened yourself to chaos. But I could not stop the thoughts. They grew slowly, like rotten timber, invisible until the structure collapses. Another memory. 60 years before my fall, we were deployed to Calistan Visafo, an agri-world that supplied food to 3 nearby hive worlds. A Janistealer cult had infiltrated the population. We discovered this too late, after the infection had spread to half the planet's 20 billion inhabitants. The contamination was genetic, irreversible. The infected would never be human again, even if they looked human now. Their children would be hybrids. Their grandchildren would be pure strange Janistealers. The planet was lost. The order came down: purge the infected populations, secure the agri-complexes for repopulation, maintain the food supply at all costs. We deployed to Sector Tertius, where intelligence suggested a cult nexus operated. My squad was part of a larger force, 2 companies of Crimson Scythes, supported by Astra Militarum regiments and inquisitorial stormtroopers. We expected resistance. We expected combat. What we found was worse. The infected had gathered in a massive cathedral. Not an imperial cathedral, but something they had built themselves. A twisted mockery that resembled both the Emperor's architecture and something else other. They were not fighting. They were praying, 40,000 of them, men, women, children, holding candles, singing hymns, imperial hymns, corrupted just slightly. The words changed in subtle ways that transformed prayers to the Emperor into prayers to the Patriarch, the cult's leader. They saw us enter. They did not flee. They did not attack. They simply turned to face us, still singing, still holding their candles. An inquisitor named Voke was with us. She gave the order without hesitation: purge them all. Leave none alive. Burn the structure to bedrock. We obeyed. It took 3 hours. 40,000 people, most of them unresisting. They stood in place and sang while we killed them. Some cried. Some prayed. Some shielded their children with their bodies. Futile, as a bolt around will pierce 2 or 3 bodies without slowing. By the end, the cathedral was a charnel house. Blood ran in rivers down the aisles. The smell, even through our armor's filtration, was overwhelming. Burned meat and promethium and something sweet and wrong that I later learned was the Janistealer taint. We burned the bodies. Deployed incendiary charges. Reduced the entire structure to ash and melted stone. Watched from a safe distance as 40,000 souls became smoke. Brother Corvin stood beside me as the fire raged. They were singing, he said. Even at the end, they were singing. They were infected. I replied. The correct response. The only response. I know, he was silent for a moment. Then, but they were also human once. Before the infection, before the cult, they were farmers. Fathers, they grew food that fed billions. And now they are dead, I said. And the food supply is secured. We have done our duty. Yes, Corvin agreed. We have done our duty. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. Does duty always require this? Is there no other way? We did not speak of it again. To speak of it would be to acknowledge doubt. And doubt was weakness. 60 years of such missions. 60 years of variations on the same theme: kill the enemies of the Imperium by whatever means necessary, regardless of who they once were. Heretics, Xenos, the corrupt, the fallen, all met the same fate at the barrel of my bolter. I became known for my efficiency. My kill count reached the tens of thousands. I earned commendations, honors, the respect of my peers and superiors. Captain Andros personally praised my tactical acumen. The chapter master knew my name, but something was changing inside me. Something I could not name, could not acknowledge, could not stop. I began to notice details I had previously ignored. The faces of those I killed, the last words they spoke, the way children looked when they realized death was coming. The expressions of parents trying to protect offspring they knew were already doomed. I told myself this was tactical awareness, understanding the enemy psychologically, anticipating their actions. But I knew, in the part of me that still remembered being a boy named Thane, that this was something else. I was beginning to care. Not about the enemy, not about heretics or Xenos or the corrupt, but about the cost, the grinding arithmetic of war, where victory was measured in bodies and the accounting never quite balanced. This was dangerous thinking. I knew it. I tried to suppress it. I threw myself into combat with renewed fervor, seeking the clarity that came in battle, when thought narrowed to the immediate tactical situation and morality became simple enemy or ally, kill or die. But in the quiet moments, in my cell, during void transit between campaigns, in the brief respites between battles, the thoughts returned. Questions without answers. Doubts without resolution. And then came Sarovin IV, the world where I would fall. TPP HRE. THEBAKIMISI. Sarovin IV was a cardinal world, a planet of cathedral cities and shrine complexes, home to 60 billion faithful, a beacon of imperial piety in the Ultima Segmentum. It should have been inviolate, protected by faith and the Emperor's blessing. But chaos respects no sanctity. A word-bearer's warband, the Anointed Tongues, led by the dark apostle Malok Vesh, had assaulted the world 6 months before our arrival. They struck with precision, corrupting key figures in the planetary government, turning faith against itself, using the world's own devotion as a weapon. By the time the Imperium responded, half the planet had fallen to chaos worship. The other half resisted. 30 billion people loyal to the Emperor, besieged in their cities, fighting a desperate holding action against their corrupted former brothers and sisters. They held for 6 months, praying for deliverance, believing that faith would be rewarded. We were that reward. 3 full chapters of Space Marines, the Crimson Scythes, the Angels Adamant, and the Doom Eagles, 30 Imperial Guard regiments. A fleet that blotted out the stars, the largest military deployment the sector had seen in decades. Our mission: liberate the loyal, purge the traitors. Reclaim Sarovin IV for the Imperium. We made planetfall at Helios Sanctum, the planet's largest remaining loyalist stronghold. The city was a monument to faith, spires reaching kilometers into the sky, each one a cathedral, each cathedral home to millions of worshippers. The Anointed Tongues had it under siege, their forces surrounding the city in a ring of corruption, slowly tightening, slowly starving the defenders. Our arrival broke the siege in hours. 3 chapters of Adeptus Astartes are not easily stopped. We deployed from orbit in drop pods and thunderhawks, crashed through the enemy lines like the Emperor's own hammer, shattered their siege positions, and drove them back in disarray. The Loyalists wept when they saw us. Literally wept, falling to their knees in the ruined streets, thanking the Emperor for sending his angels. Old men kissed our armored boots. Children reached out to touch us as if we were holy relics. Priests led prayers of thanksgiving. I felt nothing. This was standard procedure. We had broken countless sieges, saved countless worlds. This was simply another campaign, another battle, another footnote in the Imperium's endless war. But Sarovin IV was different. The Anointed Tongues did not flee. They regrouped, reinforced, and prepared for a second assault. Dark Apostle Malok Vesh voxed a message to our command: I surrender the city, abandon the Loyalists, withdraw from the planet, or face total war. Our response was immediate: come and die. The second assault came at dawn 3 days after our arrival. The Anointed Tongues attacked with everything: Chaos Space Marines, cultist hordes, demonic summons, traitor guard regiments, corrupted war machines. They came not to conquer but to annihilate, to leave no stone upon stone, to drown the Loyalists in blood and present their skulls to the dark gods. My squad was assigned to the Cathedral of the Eternal Throne, a massive structure at the city's heart, where millions of refugees had gathered seeking sanctuary. Our orders were simple: hold the cathedral, allow no enemy to desecrate it, protect the civilians at all costs. We had defended such positions 100 times before. It should have been routine, but nothing about Sarovan IV was routine. The enemy came in waves. First, the cultists, corrupted civilians, their bodies twisted by warp, taint, wielding improvised weapons and screaming prayers to the ruinous powers. We cut them down by the hundreds, our bolters never silent, each shell finding flesh. Then the Chaos Space Marines, brothers who had turned from the Emperor's light, who wore armor marked with blasphemous symbols, who had abandoned honor for power. We fought them hand to hand in the cathedral's outer halls, chainblade against chainblade, the combat brutal and personal. We held. My squad held. Every single one of my brothers fought like the warriors they were, fearless, disciplined, perfect. And then the daemons came. Malok Vesh had gathered his coven on the cathedral steps and performed a mass ritual. Blood of 1,000 cultists, willingly given. The warp veil tore, and daemons poured through. Not bloodletters, not the martial daemons of Khorne, but something worse. Plague-bearers of Nurgle, creatures of rot and disease, their touch bringing corruption, their very presence poisoning reality. They shambled forward, slow but inexorable. Our bolters hurt them, but did not stop them. They healed almost as fast as we could wound them, their bodies knitting back together, flies and maggots spilling from each wound. "Fall back!" I ordered. "Interior positions! Use the choke points!" We retreated into the cathedral proper. Behind us, millions of civilians screamed in terror, packed into the nave and transepts and side chapels. Nowhere to run, no escape if we failed. We established a defensive line at the main entrance, a massive archway, 30 meters wide, where the daemons would be forced to come at us frontally. We positioned Brother Doran with his last cannon at the arch's center, myself and brothers Kilos, Vren, and Malchos forming a firing line, the others providing supporting fire and ready to plug any breach. The plague-bearers came. We killed them. They kept coming. We killed more. They shambled over the bodies of their fellows through our bolter fire, through Doran's Lascanon beams, through everything we could throw at them. And they were winning. Slowly, inexorably. For every daemon we killed, 2 more appeared from the warp tier. We were being overwhelmed. "We need to close the portal," Havrim shouted over the Vox. "It's in the cathedral square. If we could reach the ritual site, disrupt it." "Negative!" I cut him off. "We hold this position. Our orders are to protect the civilians." "Sergeant, if we don't close that portal, there won't be any civilians! The daemons will overrun us in minutes!" He was right. I knew he was right. Tactically, strategically, the correct action was to sortie, reach the portal, collapse it by killing the summoners or disrupting the ritual geometry. It was a suicide mission. We would have to fight through hundreds of daemons to reach it. But it was also the only way to stop the tide. But it meant abandoning our position. It meant leaving the cathedral entrance undefended, even for the minutes it would take us to reach the portal. And in those minutes, the daemons would pour inside. The civilians would die, all of them, millions of souls slaughtered because I abandoned my post. I had a choice: follow tactical doctrine and save the city, or hold my position and protect those immediately under my care. I chose wrong. "We hold!" I ordered. "Reform the line! Pour everything into those archways! We do not abandon our post!" My squad obeyed. They always obeyed. But I saw the look Havrim gave me. The moment of hesitation from Corvin. They knew. They knew I had made the wrong choice. They knew I was prioritizing the immediate over the strategic, emotion over logic, compassion over duty. But they obeyed. We held for another 17 minutes. 17 minutes of unrelenting combat, of bolters overheating and chainswords jamming and ammunition running low. 17 minutes of watching the daemon tide grow thicker, darker, more numerous. And then, behind us, inside the cathedral, the screaming changed pitch. I turned. My helmet's auto senses immediately identified the source daemons inside the cathedral. They had found another entrance, a service tunnel, a forgotten crypt, access, something, and they were inside among the civilians. Throne, Kilos whispered. The slaughter was instant, millions of people, packed into tight spaces, with nowhere to run and no way to fight. The plague-bearers waded into them like farmers harvesting wheat, their blessed blades cutting down a dozen people with each swing, plague and corruption spreading with every touch. I had failed. My choice, my prioritization, my compassion, it had killed them anyway. And by holding this position instead of closing the portal, I had lost any chance of preventing it. Al Scuades Kovargi Opertialao. The order came through from Captain Andros. P-R-O-T-O. Why? Far too late, but we tried. Emperor knows we tried. My squad abandoned our position, rendered moot now anyway, and plunged into the cathedral's interior. We fought in packed crowds, unable to use ranged weapons for fear of hitting civilians, forced into close combat where the plague-bearers' corruption could touch us directly. Brother Juth went down first. A plague-bearer's blade opened his armor and the corruption poured in. I watched his armor begin to rust, to corrupt, to rot, while he still lived inside it. He fell screaming, his flesh liquefying. Brother Olith died next, dragged into the crowd by grasping daemon hands, torn apart while trying to shield a family of 6. The family died anyway seconds later. Brother Kine took a plague, blade through the chest. The wound didn't kill him. We were Astartes. We could survive such injuries. But the corruption did. His organs began to fail, one by one, shutting down as Nurgle's blessings turned his biology against itself. We were losing. Not just the battle. We were losing ourselves, being ground down, being corrupted, being unmade. And then salvation came, but not for the civilians. The fleet, seeing the situation deteriorating, made the decision we could not. They launched an orbital strike, not on the enemy positions, but on the cathedral itself. Precision munitions, designed to collapse the structure and crush everything inside. The order came through our Vox. All Astartes, immediate evacuation. Mark is away. You have 90 seconds. 90 seconds to get clear of a structure kilometers across, packed with millions of people and hundreds of daemons. 90 seconds before multi-ton munitions traveling at orbital velocities reduced everything to rubble. We ran. I ordered my squad to fall back, to reach minimum safe distance. We fought our way through the crowds, literally shoving civilians aside, unable to help them, unable to do anything but save ourselves. Brother Corvin stopped. 30 seconds to impact. He stopped and turned back. "C.O.R.V.M. movie!" I shouted. He didn't. He stood at the cathedral's entrance, bolter raised, firing into the daemon masses, providing covering fire for civilians trying to escape, knowing they wouldn't make it, knowing he wouldn't make it, doing it anyway. "Teach Emperor, plus!" he roared. The munitions struck. The cathedral collapsed. Corvin vanished in an instant, crushed beneath 1,000 tons of falling stone. The civilians he tried to save died with him. The daemons died, banished back to the warp when their physical forms were destroyed. Millions of loyalists died. The very people we had come to save, killed by Imperial munitions, ordered by Imperial commanders, executed by the very fleet that had promised deliverance. My squad had entered that cathedral with 10 men. We left with 6, and it was my fault. Tu quant to seish prf ou. The mini su. The battle for Saravan IV lasted another 3 months. We eventually won. Chaos was pushed back. The anointed tongues were destroyed. Dark Apostle Malok, Vesh was slain in single combat by the Angel's Adamant's chapter master. The planet was reclaimed for the Imperium. 30 billion loyalists had been alive when we arrived. 12 billion survived. The rest died. In the fighting, in the sieges, in the necessary sacrifices like the cathedral strike, this was counted as a victory, a triumph of Imperial arms. The planet was saved. The corruption was purged. Saravan IV would rebuild, repopulate, continue serving the Imperium. But I could not forget. I could not stop seeing Corvin, standing alone at that entrance, choosing death over abandoning those he could not save. I could not stop running the tactical calculus. If I had sorted to close the portal, how many would have lived? If I had prioritized strategic victory over immediate protection, would fewer have died? The numbers haunted me. The equations refused to balance. Captain Andros summoned me 6 days after the campaign's conclusion. We were still on Sarovan IV, overseeing reconstruction efforts and preparing for redeployment. I reported to his command post, a repurposed administratum building, its walls still scarred by bolter fire. He stood with his back to me, looking out over the ruins of Helios Sanctum. The city was a corpse. Half its spires had fallen. The cathedral of the Eternal Throne was a crater. Bodies were still being recovered from the rubble, though after 6 days, there was little left worth recovering. "Brother-Sergeant Thane," he said without turning. "Tell me what happened at the cathedral." I gave my report, factual, precise. The enemy composition, the defensive positions, the decision to hold rather than sortie, the flanking assault through the service tunnels, the casualties, the orbital strike, the aftermath. He listened without interruption. When I finished, silence stretched between us. "You made the wrong choice," he said finally. "Yes, Captain. You prioritized immediate tactical objectives over strategic necessity. You allowed emotion to override doctrine. You cost us 4 brothers and failed to save the civilians regardless." "Yes, Captain. Brother Havram's logs show he counseled you to close the portal. You overruled him."
"Yes, Captain."
"Why?" The question hung in the air. Why? Such a simple word. Such an impossible answer. "I believed we could hold both objectives," I said. The lie came easily. "I assessed that our defensive position was sufficiently strong to contain the Daemon incursion while other elements could close the portal. I did not anticipate the secondary breach. You believed wrong." "Yes, Captain." "Or perhaps—" He turned to face me. His expression was unreadable, his sogmetic eye wearing as it focused. "Perhaps you made the choice knowing it was wrong. Perhaps you could not bear the thought of abandoning those civilians, even for the minutes necessary to execute proper tactics. Perhaps, brother, Sergeant Thane, you allowed compassion to compromise your judgment." I said nothing. To confirm would be to admit weakness. To deny would be to lie to my superior officer. "The Codex Astartes is clear," Andros continued. "Personal feelings have no place in tactical decisions. We do not fight for individuals. We fight for humanity, the vast, abstract mass of it, spread across 1,000,000 worlds. 1 city, 1,000,000 people, even 1 billion people. These are acceptable losses if their sacrifice serves the greater whole." "I understand, Captain." "Do you?" He stepped closer. "Because I am not certain you do. You are 314 years old, Thane. You have served with distinction. You are an exemplary warrior and a capable sergeant. But lately, your reports have shown concerning patterns. You question orders. You seek justifications beyond it is commanded. You dwell on the dead rather than focusing on the mission." He produced a data slate. "My journal. The private writings I thought secure. Your cell was searched as part of the investigation," he said, seeing my reaction. "Standard procedure when assessing tactical failures. We found this. My stomach, even a transhuman stomach, twisted. Those pages contained 3 centuries of doubt, of questions, of observations that no loyal space marine should make. They were evidence of corruption. Not chaos corruption, perhaps, but something equally dangerous, the corruption of independent thought." "I have read it all," Andros said. "Every entry, every question, every moment of doubt and hesitation." He set the data slate down. "Do you know what I found? My unworthiness." "Captain, no." The word surprised me. "I found a space marine who still remembers he was human, who looks at the people we kill and sees people, not targets, who understands that victory has costs beyond the tactical and strategic." He sighed, an oddly human sound from a transhuman warrior. "This makes you dangerous, Thane. Not to the enemy, to us, to the chapter, to the Imperium itself. Because the moment you start seeing the people behind the statistics, The moment you start weighing individual lives against strategic objectives, you become paralyzed. You make choices like the cathedral. You get your brothers killed. I understand, Captain. No, he said again. You don't, not yet, but you will. The door opened. Chaplain Mordrin entered, his skull-faced helmet dark and terrible. Behind him came 2 brothers from the chapter's apothecarian and 3 from the reclusium. Brother-Sergeant Varek Thane, Chaplain Mordrin intoned. You stand accused of tactical incompetence resulting in unnecessary casualties. You stand accused of allowing personal sentiment to override combat doctrine. You stand accused of harboring dangerous thoughts that compromise your effectiveness as an Adeptus Astartes. The charges are acknowledged, I said, the formal response, the only response. You have 2 choices. First, submit to immediate execution, die with honor. Your name will be recorded in the rolls of the fallen. Your gene, seed will be harvested and passed to a worthier successor. Your service will be remembered. Second, I asked, though I already knew. Penitence, you will be stripped of rank and honor. You will undergo psychological reconditioning to purge these dangerous thoughts. You will serve as a penitent brother until such time as you prove yourself worthy of reinstatement. This process may take decades. It may take centuries. It may never succeed. But you will live. You will serve. You will have opportunity for redemption. I should have chosen death. A clean ending, an honorable exit. My name in the chapter's records, my deeds remembered, my gene, seed preserved. But I was a coward. Or perhaps I was still human enough to want to live, even in disgrace. I choose penitence. Chaplain Mordrin nodded, as if he had expected this, so witnessed. Brother-Sergeant Varek Thane is hereby reduced to the status of penitent brother. He is stripped of rank, of command, of honors. He will undergo immediate reconditioning and reassignment. They took my armor. Piece by piece, they removed it, the sacred ceramite that had protected me for 3 centuries, the machine spirits I had bonded with, the purity seals and honor, markings I had earned through blood. They left me in the black body glove beneath, standing exposed and diminished before my former captain. They took my weapons, bolter, chainsword, combat knife. All were removed and marked for reassignment. They took my markings. The apothecaries used surgical tools to remove my chapter tattoos, to burn away the brands that marked me as a Crimson Scythe. The pain was significant even for a space marine. I did not cry out. That much pride remained. When they finished, I was naked of honor. A space marine in body, but no longer in soul. A weapon that had proven defective, relegated to lesser service until I could be repaired or discarded. Report to the apothecarian, Captain Andros said. His voice was not cruel, not kind, simply matter of fact. Your reconditioning begins immediately. I bowed and left. Behind me, I heard Chaplain Mordrin speak to Andros. Will he survive the process? Unknown, Andros replied. But if he does not, his gene, seed will at least serve someone worthier. Psychological reconditioning of a space marine is not a gentle process. We are built to be resistant to mental manipulation, our augmented minds capable of withstanding torture, brainwashing, even limited psychic assault. To remake a space marine psychology requires breaking through layers of biological and mental defense that would kill a normal human. They began with chemical treatments. Injections of psychotropic drugs designed to lower my mental defenses, to make me susceptible to suggestion, to erode the certainty that had sustained me for 3 centuries. The drugs created experiences. Hallucinations is too mild a word. I existed in fractured realities, watching the cathedral fall over and over, seeing Corvin die in 1,000 different ways, hearing the screams of millions in symphonies of despair. During one such episode, I watched my younger self, Thane the boy, not Thane the Marine, standing before the chaplain in that selection yard on Vanheim. But in this version, when the chaplain asked, "What do you fear?" the boy answered honestly, "I fear becoming something that doesn't care. I fear losing the part of me that knows killing is wrong, even when it's necessary." The chaplain's response, then you have already failed. The drugs continued for 3 weeks. By the end, I could no longer distinguish memory from hallucination from reality. My sense of self had fragmented into 1,000 shards, each one reflecting a different failure, a different moment of weakness, a different proof of my unworthiness. Then came the hypno-conditioning. They placed me in a sensory deprivation chamber. Absolute darkness, absolute silence, suspended in amniotic gel so I could not feel my body. In this void, I floated while recorded messages played directly into my auditory centers. Hour after hour, day after day, week after week. The same messages, repeated endlessly. You are a weapon. Weapons do not feel. Weapons do not question. Weapons serve. The individual does not matter. Only humanity matters. 1 death or 1,000,000 deaths. The equation is meaningless. Only victory matters. Compassion is weakness. Hesitation is failure. Doubt is the first step to corruption. The Emperor does not care for your thoughts. The Emperor does not care for your feelings. The Emperor cares only for your service. You exist to kill. You exist to die. Between these two certainties, nothing else has meaning. The messages continued. I tried to resist, to hold on to the parts of myself that questioned, that felt, that cared, but suspended in darkness with no external reference points, with drugs still in my system, with my sense of identity already shattered. I felt myself eroding. Piece by piece, the person I had been was stripped away, replaced with pure function, pure obedience, pure nothing. I don't know how long I was in that chamber. Time ceased to have meaning. It might have been weeks. It might have been months. When they finally extracted me, I could barely remember my name. Brother Thane, Chaplain Mordrin said, his voice cutting through the fog in my mind. Do you understand why you failed at the cathedral? Words were difficult. Thoughts were difficult. I prioritized the immediate over the strategic, inadequate. He struck me across the face. Even diminished as I was, the blow barely registered. You failed because you cared, because you saw those civilians as people rather than acceptable losses, because you allowed emotion to override duty. Say it, I failed because I cared. Again, I failed because I cared. AGAIN! I failed because I cared. Good. Mordrin nodded. Remember this. Carve it into whatever remains of your soul. Caring kills. Compassion corrupts. The only purity is in absolute service, absolute obedience, absolute rejection of sentiment. He left me in that chamber for another week. By the time they extracted me again, I believed him. When the reconditioning was deemed successful, they gave me my new assignment. Not to a battle company. Not even to the scout company. They assigned me to the chapter's apothecarian to assist in the harvesting and processing of gene seed. This was considered appropriate punishment. To be so close to the sacred genetic legacy of the chapter, to handle daily the biological material that made us what we were, but to be forever barred from the honor of implanting it into new aspirants. This was its own special torment. My duties were simple. When a brother fell in battle, I would extract his progenoid glands, the organs that generated new gene seed. I would catalog them, store them, prepare them for eventual implantation into worthy aspirants. I was a glorified mortician harvesting the future from the dead. I performed this duty for 40 years. 40 years of cutting into the corpses of my former brothers. 40 years of extracting organs still warm from bodies still cooling. 40 years of cataloging deaths and preserving legacies for warriors I would never become again. The reconditioning held. I felt nothing as I worked. No sorrow for the dead, no regret for my fall, no hope for redemption. I was empty, hollowed out, a shell performing its function. Exactly what they had wanted to create. But emptiness is not the same as absence. And in the hollow places where my personality had been, something else grew. I began writing again. Not a journal, they had destroyed that along with everything else that made me me. But reports, observations, technical documentation of the gene seed harvesting process, dry, factual, emotionless, except buried in the technical language, hidden in the clinical descriptions, were questions. Observations. thoughts that should not be there. An excerpt from my 40th year of penance. Gene, seed extraction from Brother-Sergeant Carvo's KIA on Valak's Prime. Both progenoid glands successfully harvested. Quality exceptional. No degradation. No mutation. Suitable for immediate implantation. Off note, Brother-Sergeant Carvos died holding a breach against orc assault, allowing 300 civilians to evacuate. He held for 17 minutes alone after his squad was killed. His last Vox transmission. Tell my neophytes I died well. He did died well. He died believing his death mattered. That those 300 civilians represented 300 futures, 300 chances for the Imperium to continue. He died with purpose. Of technical note, the gene seed does not remember this. It carries only the biological legacy, the genetic information. The courage, the sacrifice, the meaning, these die with the warrior. We preserve the flesh. The soul is lost. Query. If we preserve only the biology and discard the humanity, what exactly are we preserving? What is the functional difference between a space marine and a particularly sophisticated weapon servitor? This query is inappropriate. Disregard. Focus on function. Gene seed batch 7734A ready for storage. I wrote hundreds of such reports. The apothecaries read them, noted the technical accuracy, and filed them away. They did not see the questions. Or perhaps they did, and simply did not care. As long as I performed my function, the thoughts in my head were irrelevant. But the thoughts grew, multiplied, reformed themselves into something approximating the person I had been before the reconditioning. The drugs had worn off. The hypno-conditioning had faded. And in the vacuum they left, memory returned. I remembered Corvin. I remembered his last stand. I remembered believing, however briefly, that those millions of civilians were worth more than tactical efficiency. I remembered being wrong. I remembered being right, and I could no longer tell the difference. In my 42nd year of penance, the chapter received a priority distress call. A hive world called Mortival was under Tyrannid assault, a splinter fleet, relatively small, but still sufficient to overwhelm the world's defenses. The Crimson Scythes were to deploy in force, conduct a fighting withdrawal to evacuate as many civilians as possible, then perform exterminatus to deny the Tyrannids biomass. It was a standard operation. The chapter had performed dozens like it. But this time, they were short-handed. Recent campaigns had depleted our numbers, and not all wounds had healed, not all losses had been replaced. Captain Andros made the decision even the penitent brothers would deploy. Even the shamed, the fallen, the dishonored. We were still space marines, still capable of killing, still useful. I was issued basic armor, not my old plate, which had been reassigned, but standard Mark IV with no ornamentation, no honors, no identity. I was given a bolter with minimal ammunition. I was assigned to Squad Tertius, 5th Company, a squad I did not know, serving under a sergeant who looked at me with unconcealed contempt. A penitent. Sergeant Valk said when I reported. They send me a penitent. What did you do, brother? Fail in combat. Break under torture. Succumb to Xeno's trickery. I hesitated, Sergeant. Hesitated. He laughed, a harsh bark. And they didn't execute you. Must have been a spectacular hesitation. It cost 4 brothers and 1 million civilians. Sergeant! Ah! The laughter died. Yes, I heard about Sarovin IV, your Thane. The fool who chose compassion over victory. Yes, Sergeant! Well, Thane, on Mortival you'll have no such choices. The mission is simple: kill Tyrannids until we run out of ammunition or they run out of Tyrannids. No civilians to protect, no tactical complexity, just pure, mindless slaughter. Think you can handle that without hesitating? Yes, so we shall see. Mortival was dying. We saw it from orbit, the world's surface crawling with tyrannid organisms, massive bioships in low orbit depositing wave after wave of creatures. The hive cities were already overrun. Only a few fortified positions remained, holdouts where Astra Militarum and PDF forces fought desperate last stands. Our mission was to reach these positions, extract the survivors, and withdraw before the exterminatus fleet arrived. Simple. Direct, no room for hesitation or moral complexity. My drop pod crashed through the roof of Manufacturum Complex Sigma 17, a massive industrial facility where 3,000 guardsmen had fortified. We deployed immediately into combat. Tyranids had already breached the outer walls and were pouring into the facility's lower levels. The combat was exactly as Sergeant Varek had promised: mindless, brutal, exhausting. We killed Hormagaunts by the dozen, Termagants by the hundred. We held choke points against Tyranid warriors. We burned through ammunition at prodigious rates, each magazine lasting minutes before being exhausted. I fought without thought. Point, shoot, reload, repeat. No decisions, no choices, just pure function. It was almost peaceful. We held for 6 hours, long enough for the guardsmen to evacuate to the extraction point. Long enough for the last transports to lift off. Long enough to hear the fleet vox that exterminatus was commencing in 30 minutes. "All squads, to the extraction point!" Captain Andros ordered. Why our leaving? Now, we ran, fought our way back through the facility, up through levels we had spent hours defending, toward the roof where our Thunderhawks waited. The Tyranids pursued, not with strategy, but with the inexorable pressure of a biological tide, simply flowing toward prey. Squad Tertius reached the roof with minutes to spare. Our Thunderhawk was there, engines screaming, ready for immediate departure. We sprinted toward it, and I heard the child. Impossible. The facility had been evacuated. The guardsmen were gone. There should be no one here, but I heard it. Through my helmet's audio sensors, enhanced and processed, a child's voice, somewhere below us, calling for help. "Thane Movie!" Sergeant Varek roared. The squad was boarding. The Thunderhawk was lifting. I stopped, turned, looked back at the access hatch leading to the lower levels. The voice continued, faint but unmistakable. A child, probably separated from their parents during the evacuation, left behind, waiting to die when the exterminatus struck. I had a choice: board the Thunderhawk and live, or go back, find the child, and probably die. The Thunderhawk would not wait, exterminatus would not be delayed, and the Tyranids were seconds behind us. I had made this choice before. At the cathedral, I had chosen to stay to protect, to prioritize the immediate over the strategic, and it had been wrong. It had cost lives. It had cost everything. The reconditioning had taught me. Compassion is weakness. One life does not matter. Only the mission matters. But standing there, hearing that voice, I realized something the reconditioning could not erase. I was not a weapon. I was not pure function. Somewhere in the hollowed-out spaces of my mind, enough of Thane remained to know that if I left that child, I would never be whole again. I had already failed once. I had already been broken, reconditioned, unmade. What did I have left to lose? Go, I voxed to Sergeant Varek. I'm staying. Tien yo, you malboy arse, icy arms or afty I'm and ITO. T-shate ice, ANO ordar. Respectfully, Sergeant, no. I cut the Vox link, turned back to the access hatch, descended into darkness toward the voice, toward certain death, toward the only choice that mattered. The lower levels were hell. Tyranids everywhere, hunting the last pockets of life. I fought through them, bolter-hammering, each shot precious. I was down to my last magazine, 30 rounds between me and melee combat. The voice led me deeper, 3rd level, 4th, 5th, each level more overrun than the last. I killed a Tyranid warrior with my last 5 rounds, 3 to crack its carapace, 2 into the exposed flesh beneath. Then my bolter clicked empty, and I drew my combat knife, 6th level. The voice was close now. I followed it to a storage room. The door half collapsed. Inside, a girl, maybe 8 years old, clutching a worn toy and a Keela pendant around her neck, covered in dust and blood that wasn't hers, alone, terrified. She saw me, saw the power armor, the chapter symbols, the angel of death come to save or kill. She did not run. She simply whispered, "Are you real? Or are you another nightmare?" "I'm real," I said. My voice, even through the helmet's Vox grill, surprised me. It was gentle. I didn't know I still had gentle. "I'm here to get you out. My parents, gone. I'm sorry, but you're not. Come with me." Now, she took my hand. Her fingers were tiny against my armored gauntlet. I pulled her up, lifted her onto my shoulders, and ran. We reached the second level before the horde caught us. Dozens of hormagaunts moving with blinding speed. I had no ammunition, no ranged weapons, just a knife and my armor and 3 centuries of experience in killing things. I set the girl down in a corner. Stay there. Don't move. Don't make a sound. Will we die? She asked. Not afraid. Just sexy. She had seen too much to fear more. Maybe, I admitted, but not without a fight. The hormagaunts came. I met them with bare hands and knife and fury. They tore at my armor, their claws finding gaps, their teeth seeking flesh. I crushed skulls and broke limbs and drove my knife into chitin again and again. I was not fighting tactically. I was not fighting efficiently. I was fighting with desperate, feral determination. The determination of an animal protecting its young. I killed 17 before they brought me down. An adrenal gland burst in my chest from exertion. A hormagaunt claw found the gap in my armor joint and severed muscle. Another caught my leg, hamstrung me, sent me to my knees. I was going to die. I had always known I would die here. But the girl, a scream of engines. The Thunderhawk hadn't left. It hovered outside the manufactorum. Its assault ramp down, Sergeant Varek standing there with a heavy bolter, laying down suppressing fire. Tan! Teach, e-girl! I grabbed her, staggered to the shattered window. The Thunderhawk was 10 meters away, hovering, the gap between us a void over a 500-meter drop. Impossible to cross. Unless I jumped. I hit the Thunderhawk's ramp with enough force to crack ceramite. The girl was safe in my arms, unharmed. I collapsed, my broken body finally failing, blood leaking from a dozen wounds. The last thing I saw before unconsciousness was Sergeant Varek's face, his expression unreadable. Idiot, he said, but he was smiling. I woke 3 days later in the apothecarian. My injuries were severe. Broken bones, torn muscles, organ damage. They had rebuilt me again with the same technology that had made me transhuman in the first place. Captain Andros stood at my bedside when I regained consciousness. The girl survived, he said without preamble. Transported to a refugee colony, she will live. Because of you. I disobeyed orders, I said. My voice was raw, damaged by the combat. Less. I endangered the mission. Yes. I repeated the same failure that earned my initial punishment. New. Andros sat in the chair beside my bed, an oddly human gesture from a transhuman warrior. At the cathedral, you failed because you made a poor tactical choice, disguised as compassion. You held a position you should have abandoned, and you did so for emotional reasons, not strategic ones. He leaned forward. On Mortival, you made a choice knowing full well it was tactically unsound. You weighed the strategic value of your life against the strategic value of one civilian child, found the equation absurd, and chose according to principle rather than calculation. That is not failure. That is something else. What? Humanity, he said simply. The thing we are supposed to fight for, even as we become less human ourselves. The thing the reconditioning tried to erase from you, and failed. He stood. I am restoring your rank. You will resume duties as Brother-Sergeant upon recovery. Your penitence is ended, Captain. That is not a request. Thane, it is an order. The chapter has need of warriors who can still remember why we fight. Who can balance tactical necessity with moral clarity. Who can be monsters when required, but who do not lose themselves in the monstrosity. He paused at the door. The girl asked about you. I told her you were an angel of death. She said no, you were an angel of mercy. I think perhaps both are true. He left. I lay in that bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had happened. I had fallen, been broken, been reconditioned, been rebuilt. And somehow, through it all, enough of me had survived to make a choice, a stupid, tactically unsound, absolutely human choice. That was 7 years ago. I am Brother-Sergeant Varek Thane again, commanding Squad Thane, 5th Company, Crimson Scythes. I have led my brothers through a dozen campaigns since Mortival. I have fought well. I have killed efficiently. I have never hesitated in combat, but I have also never forgotten. I still write reports, late at night in my cell, not to hide thoughts, but to preserve them, to remember that beneath the armor and the augmentations and the indoctrination, something human remains. Something that can still ask why, that can still care, even when caring is tactically inadvisable. The other day, I received a letter. Such things are rare. The Imperium's postal systems are notoriously unreliable, and correspondence with Space Marines rarer still. But this one reached me, passed through channels and security protocols until it arrived at my cell. It was from her, the girl. She's 14 now on a refugee world, studying to become a medici. The letter was simple. Dear Angel, I don't know if you'll receive this. I don't even know if you're still alive. But I needed to tell you I am alive because of you. I am learning to help others because you helped me. When I thought I would die alone and afraid, you came, you chose me. I don't know why. But thank you. I will try to be worthy of that choice. Kira, I keep that letter with my combat knife and Rosarius. Reminders of who I am and what I fight for. They told me failure was death. They were wrong. Failure is living with your choices, carrying them forward, using them to become something more than the sum of your augmentations and programming. It is understanding that perfection is a lie, that we are all broken in our own ways, and that sometimes the most human thing we can do is fail forward. To make mistakes that cost us everything, and then to rebuild ourselves into something that can make better mistakes tomorrow. I was made to be perfect, and so they unmade me when I proved to be flawed. But in unmaking me, they revealed something they had forgotten, that Space Marines are not born perfect. We are made from human boys, from flesh and doubt and fear, and no amount of surgery or conditioning or genetic manipulation can fully erase that origin. We are weapons, but we are also men, and perhaps, that duality is not a weakness to be purged, but a strength to be preserved. My squad is assembling. We deploy to Vardus Prime at dawn, another world, another war, another opportunity to serve the Emperor and humanity. I do not know if I will survive. I do not know if I will succeed. I do not know if I will be forced to make another impossible choice between duty and compassion, between the individual and the species. But I know this. When that moment comes, I will not hesitate to think. I will weigh the options. I will make my choice, and I will accept the consequences, whatever they may be, because that is what it means to be human. That is what it means to serve with honor. That is what it means to be a Space Marine who has failed, been broken, been rebuilt, and who still chooses to fight not just for humanity, but Vayas One. Even in failure, I still serve. Even in doubt, I still believe. Even in darkness, I still remember the light. My name is Brother-Sergeant Varek Thane of the Crimson Scythes. I am a failed Space Marine, and I would not have it any other way. To tour for the Emperor, for humanity, for those who remember what it means to be both. THEND.